Wow, check that out. Okay, so it is June 21st, 2018, the summer solstice here, and I'm just looking at the top 4 albums of 2018 on Prog Archives. And check this out. Marco Ragni is at number 1, The Wandering Caravan. Number 2, Ones and Zeros, Volume 0 by Third Degree. Number 3 is Galahad, Seas of Change. And number 4, Bomber Goggles with their album Geirland. I've been watching this now for the last few weeks, basically because 3 of the bands here in the top 4 are people I'm connected with on Facebook. So, Third Degree, their bass player Robert Pashman, he's been promoting that they have been in the number 1 spot for the last several weeks, which is really great to see because Third Degree, they've been around for a long time and they've always produced quality music, but they have always struggled to really get a bigger audience, and their previous album in 2015, Ones and Zeros Volume 1, actually put them up in the top 5 for that year on Prog Archive. So their follow-up album, Ones and Zeros Volume 0, has been holding the number 1 position for a while now, so I'm really glad for those guys that they are finally starting to get recognition for their music. And actually, we're going to talk about them in the next episode, episode 8. Marco Ragni has also been around for some time, and we talked about him in episode 3, and at that time I also mentioned his album here, The Wandering Caravan. He moved into the top 20 a couple of weeks back, and I watched him get into the top 10 and into the top 5, and now here he is in the number 1 position, and that was announced yesterday on Facebook. He's number 1 on Prog Archives for 2018. Well, of course, it's always a race, and there's up and down, and, you know, people are moving up and down all the time. But anyway, he's in the number 1 spot now. So for Marco, I'm really pleased. Now, in the number 4 position here, we have Bomber Goggles, which is a band that features Peter Matukniak, whom we also talked about in episode 3. And at that time, I also introduced this album. This one also moved into the top 20, and both Marco and Bomber Goggles are on Melodic Revolution Records. So Melodic Revolution Records on Facebook was also promoting their climbing in the ranks here on Prog Archives, and they moved into the top 10, and now here they are in the top 5, in fact top 4 if you even want to put it that way. Galahad is an established band. They're a big name band. They've been around since the 1980s, released albums since the 1990s. They're known. They put out a new album, people are listening. Alright, and we also have in position number 5, Tony Banks, his album entitled 5. I don't know if he set himself up for this or not, but I mean, this is Tony Banks, right? Tony Banks, the guy who was in Genesis, alright? A big name guy here. And so we're seeing these lesser known artists are actually holding the top positions in Prog Archives for 2018. So congratulations to Marco Ragni and Bomber Goggles and Third Degree. Good job, you guys. You did it. Keep it up. Okay, let's get on with the rest of today's program. Cue the music. Okay, so today's topic is not to introduce any particular artists or bands exactly. Today I want to talk about some albums that I've really been enjoying lately. And I know this sounds like a typical thing for these kind of programs to do, but anyway, I just gotta tell you about them. First though, I want to tell you about some favorites which we're not going to talk about, and the reason is because they've already been mentioned, but I want to mention them again. First is a band called Myron, which features Phil Narrow on vocals, and we talked about this in episode 5 when we introduced Phil Narrow. This album I've still been really enjoying. It is kind of traditional heavy metal with a bit of a Guns N' Roses side to it, but a really heavy Guns N' Roses with more traditional metal power into it. So it's not death metal, it's not black metal, it's not extreme metal, it's not power metal or anything. It's just really good, heavy, hard-hitting rock on the metal side. Great stuff. Next up, well, here he is there, Marco Ragni, The Wandering Caravan. As we said, #1 spot on Prog Archives at the time of this recording. Loving this album. I still think Land of Blue Echoes is my favorite because that's the one that got me into him. But this album has its own special quality to it, and once you get into it, it is fabulous. So, good stuff there. Transport Arian, Therianthrope. I introduced this in episode 3, part 2. I've come back to it again. I still love it. Really cool album. And aside from the CD, there's no plastic in here. Remember in the video, it's like this special package you gotta unfold. Anyway, that one. Colin Tench Project, Minor Masterpiece. This was recently reviewed in Euro Rock Press, a rock magazine in Japan. Thanks to me submitting a copy of the CD to them to review. Thank you, folks. This is probably the oldest of the albums that I have here since I got it back in March, but still there are some great tracks on here that I love to come back to. Of course, Caribou, whom we talked about in episode 4, their Unchosen album. There are still tracks on here that I come back to regularly, and there is a new album in the works, probably coming out later this year, all new material, so can look forward to that. Bomber Goggles, Ireland, yes, holding #4 on Prog Archives as of this day, June 21st, 2018. People are really recognizing the brilliance of this album. I talked about it and introduced some tracks in episode 3. So, yay. Dust of Stars by Band of Rain. This was in the last video, episode 6. Still a brilliant album, especially now since I've heard some of their older stuff. I can see how they really reached a fabulous apex with this one here. It's not to say the older stuff was bad, not at all. They had some great music, but they totally topped themselves with this one. Flaming Row, we talked about this in the previous episode because of Merrick Arnold being on here. Still loving this album. In fact, now I've gone back to listen to some Arian CDs because it inspired me to listen to those after listening to this. Brilliant work. Like I said, progressive metal, but it's also a rock opera. Wonderful. And Damonek's album On Track. I'm still really loving this. It has not left my phone anyway, so I can listen to it anytime during my commute, as with most of these others. A new Damonek album is coming out later this year. Guy Manning, I looked into his background. I had no idea that this guy had such an interesting background. He was in The Tangent, who I've been thinking about getting for a long time, plus lots of other cool projects, his own band. He was in Parallel or 90 Degrees, so there's a future episode coming up on him, and I've ordered a couple of his albums too, so watch out for that later on. Okay, that is some of the great albums I have been enjoying that we've already talked about. Now let's talk about 5 new ones. Up first, this is Forever 12, their album Home. This was sent to me as a promotional copy. I had no idea about the band. This is their 4th album. They're an American band. I think it was from California. At first it was like, wow, these guys can really play. And then it was like, well, I've heard it before in like Car Mechanic or Flower Kings or Glass Hammer. But after listening to it again a few times, it still is wow. These guys really can compose technical, symphonic prog. It is really just great music. Even if it sounds similar to other things you've heard before, these guys really know what they're doing. Fantastic work there. So I have received permission through Nick Katona of Melodic Revolution Records, who said that they would be happy to be featured in the video, Forever 12 would. So I'm going to pick a couple of my favorites, Daisy Chain, Carmageddon, and a little bit from Home as well. 3 tracks from this album, which we will feature now.
So dig on down in fertile ground and carry on a new horizon, and the sky's done different here. Does it feel like home to you this time? Every layer of dirt that is added each day will bury just a few. You don't mind if I call you Rose, a love that shines and no one knows.
For our next album, actually, I do not have a copy of the CD to show you. I ordered it, and it was shipped on May 16th, and for some reason it went to China. It arrived there on May 22nd, has been sitting there ever since. I told Melodic Revolution Records about it. They have reshipped it, so I'm hoping to see it anytime soon. However, I have been able to listen to it on Bandcamp, and that band is Evolve 4. Now, this album is a little bit of an older one. It goes back to 2007, and this is Peter Matugniak's return to recording. Because, as we talked about him previously, he was involved in some bands in the 80s, and then he went off to India, and then he moved to California, and he was working and doing other things. But anyway, he came back with Evolve 4, and this band just totally caught my attention because there is some 70s prog influence, like Steve Hackett when he was with Genesis at least, but there is this also kind of indie sound from the late 70s, and I recently watched some documentaries about late 70s indie music out of Britain, so I felt there were some similarities there. It is somehow fresh and almost innocent, but at the same time, there's a little bit of power and grit to it. And it just tells us where Peter was going to go with his music later on with Gecko Project, his solo releases, and now with Bomber Goggles. So this album has just really captured my attention, and even though it's an older one, I wanted to feature it today because, well, it's the only one of Peter's albums I haven't featured yet. No, it's great music. So let's listen to some samples from Evolve 4's one and only album, The Decadent Light.
In the air, like the smoke. One more hit, and I'm gone. One more hit, and it's done.
Okay, next up, allow me to introduce Nathan James and Ian Beabout. Ian, I knew about him because he played on the Colin Tench Project album Hair and a G-String, and so he's a flautist. I knew about him through that, and I always wondered what else does he do, and so later on he came up on Facebook with this one here, Colouratura, that's the band name, and Unfamiliar Skies. Nathan James and Ian Beabout. Basically, Nathan does the songwriting, plays a lot of the instruments. There are other musicians on here as well. And Ian, I think, is involved mostly in the production, but also playing the flute. Anyway, they work together to create this album here. This one has been really wonderful because it has such a wonderful retro 70s sound, but more of the obscure type band or more experimental type band. I can hear something like Hatfield in the North. I can hear them in one or two songs. So at first I thought, oh, they have a strong Canterbury scene influence. But there's also some other stuff which I couldn't place until I saw Ian mention something about how he really liked the Captain Beefheart album, Trout Mask Replica, which I knew nothing about actually, so I watched a documentary about Captain Beefheart, and it's like, oh, I see, okay, so there are some Captain Beefheart references, or I mean influences in here as well, plus other stuff that just sounds like it's among a lot of the obscure albums that I have from the early 70s. So they have this like retro 70s synthesizer sound that's like from Alucard, from a Gentle Giant's first album, and this very gritty, buzzing, distorted guitar sound. The songs are sometimes really punchy and almost acerbic, with the kind of distorted vocals and this brass and so on, and other times really kind of haunting and I don't know how else to describe it. So we're going to listen to some samples from this album here. I'm gonna pick something from Parallels, Photograph, which reminds me of Hatfield in the North, Nautilus, and it just gotta, oh, I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna choose 3, all right? And by the time I get this video going, I'm gonna give you a pretty good idea of how this album sounds. It's brilliant. It's not on Prog Archives yet. For shame, somebody do something about that. Okay, Colouratura and Unfamiliar Skies. The next band I would like to talk about is Fabulae Dramatis, or Fabulae Dramatis. Okay, always got the pronunciation wrong of stuff. But anyway, this is a band that really deserves mention. This is their second album, Solar Times Fables, came out last year, 2017. They had another album in 2013 called Om, which is now almost impossible to find on CD, but there are downloads. Fabulae Dramatis is basically a band that was pieced together by Isabel Restropo, who is originally from Colombia, but now residing in Belgium. And she got in touch with Hamlet, who is of Transport Aryan, whom we've talked about before, as well as another Colombian guitarist who was also living in Belgium, Daniel Diaz. And basically she had some songs left over from a previous project that she wanted to rework, and so they got together to do this, and then they started to build up a band, and that band became Fabulae Dramatis. Fabulae Dramatis is a heavy metal band. Here they are. Well, this is on this album, 6-member band. Currently 4 members performing. They have death metal elements, melodic death metal elements, also some extreme metal elements, but not really technical and speedy. Their thing is that they want to tell through the lyrics stories, fables or myths from different cultures around the world. And so, as you can maybe see by the album cover here, their stage attire reflects a different time anyway. And their music also, they like to include different exotic instruments in order to enhance their music. Now, it's also not straightforward heavy metal. Because they like to put all this other stuff in, it becomes more closer to avant-garde as well as progressive. And there are some things to be said specifically about the vocals. We have Isabel Restropo, who has a beautiful operatic style voice, 5-octave range, they say. As well, other members in the band also sing, some of them with clean or harsh vocals, some of them with death metal vocals. So we have at least 4 members singing on the recording, and each of them having at least 2 different abilities in their singing skills. So it's a wonderful arrangement of vocals, of heavy music, and also exotic music, sometimes mysterious. You can hear saxophone, there's harmonium, lots of sitar, of course, lots of interesting instruments, lots of interesting music. None of the songs exactly really long. Each of them a kind of short story, very well crafted. I get a thrill every time this album comes on. I say, let's listen to Solar Times Fables today, and it comes on. It's just, yeah, I gotta listen to this one all the way through. I've pulled the thing out here from the CD. And just, you know, I'm saying exotic instruments here, so I thought I would like to say to Fabulae Dramatis, I have some exotic instruments here too. This is a kind of little kid's toy, but it's a Chinese drum, and if you turn it like this, you get... And it appears one of the little stringy wingy thingies is not hitting very well. Come on, you go. Huh? How about that, huh? You want me to record it and send it to you? And also I have here some Danish cowbells, which used to hang in my house when I was a child. And when it was dinner time, my parents would ring the bell. Here you go. Dinner! Okay. So hey, yeah, I have these exotic instruments in my collection. If you want me to record anything and send it to you. That's kind of a joke. Okay, Fabulae Dramatis, Solar Times Fables. Let's listen to some clips from 3 tracks from this album. I will try to put in some variety so you can hear just how diverse and incredible this band sounds. You can find videos on YouTube. You can probably also hear samples of music on their website or somewhere out there anyway. Do check them out. This is one of my 2 favorite new discoveries so far this year. Great stuff. Listen to Fabulae Dramatis. Thank you. So then, today we have one more album to talk about, and that is this one here. Or is it this one here? Well, this is Babal, B-A-B-A-L, formerly known as Babel, B-A-B-B-L-E, and before that, Wisdom's Children. I think they've been around in some capacity for some time because they have an album that is bits and pieces of recordings going back to 1993. They have released a few albums so far. This latest one, The Circle of Confusion of Tongues, is just released this year, I believe 2018, yes, on Melodic Revolution Records. And actually, I had a bit of an interest in this band, and I was very fortunate when I ordered some CDs from Melodic Revolution Records that this was sent along as kind of promotion, and it turned out to be my favorite of all the CDs I got in that bunch. And I liked it so much and had so many good things to say about it. Guitarist Rob Williams then felt that I would really appreciate a vinyl copy of the album. So let's just take a look here. Babel, The Circle of Confusion of Tongues, and let's take a look inside all this fabulous artwork in here, photos of the band, mostly vocalist Karen Langley, who is also the songwriter, and also guitarist Rob Williams. Karen Langley is, let's say, her vocal style totally intrigued me because even though I might have heard similar stuff before, for me it was something new in my collection of music. I could say that maybe there were similarities to late 70s independent music, maybe something like Talking Heads, some stuff you might have heard in the 80s. Some people have said there are a little bit of like Captain Beefheart or Frank Zappa in here. Just her style is really unique to me anyway, and I love listening to this album partly because of Karen Langley's vocal delivery. It's quite theatrical and very interesting, and her singing style is not usual. So for me, it is an album that really grips me for that, and as well, their music is very interesting. Rob Williams plays a variety of styles on guitars. It's sometimes heavy, it's sometimes funky, it's sometimes psychedelic. He's very good like that. And the rest of the band, sorry I don't have their names right now, but bass, drums, keyboards, they're all fantastic. They make some very interesting videos, and usually featuring Karen Langley, but also sometimes other members appear. The very first track, Teeth of the Universe, is so interesting because it is, I think it's about teeth and going to the dentist. It mentions top set, bottom set, front set, back set, top set, bottom set, front, back, canine, molars, incisors. Then after that, there is the song Amanda, which I believe is the first single. They have a video. It is such a cool song and such a great follow-up. After listening to Teeth of the Universe, I feel, wow, what a great song. This album's starting off wonderfully, and then Amanda comes in. It's like, oh, it just got even better. There are, I think, 12 songs on here. 7 of them I just love to listen to. 3 of them I also really like, and 2 of them they're alright, but, you know, I wouldn't want them removed from the album. They're an important part of the album. Other songs, The Foot High Guy, really interesting. I think I want to pull off a sample of that for listening to this. The Great Overwhelm. Gosh, where is it on the track listing here? Okay. Then there's the song The Great Overwhelm. It's actually not listed on the LP, but it's here on the CD. There's a video for that too. That is also a really cool song, one of my favorites. The last track, Block Pave Me Over, I can totally relate to the lyrics. It's about filling your garden space with concrete blocks, block pavement for car parking. No more space to grow plants, have a lawn, have flowers or anything except for little flower boxes. And I can really relate to that because in my neighborhood around here and many neighborhoods these days, new houses are built with big slabs of concrete for parking spots for cars and bicycles, and almost no yard space is for plants and for having a garden. And one of the reasons why we bought this house here where I'm living in now is because there was enough garden space for us to have a lawn and flowers and trees and so on. So yeah, I really relate to the lyrics of that. So I want you to listen to some samples from Teeth of the Universe, Amanda, and maybe Foot High Guy, The Great Underwhelm. I'll pick out 3 samples and let you listen to those, alright? And there we go for today. So let's finish with Babal, and enjoy. Thanks for watching.
No chatter, no phrases, no tap dancing with the crazies. The teeth will not bite down on the leather straps as the ECT takes hold and sets the teeth dancing. Oh, dancing in rhythm with a medicine, medicine. Dancing. And yeah, if you recognize anyone, let me know. That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. You did music. Grade 8. Great. Went to the little dramas for kids. Stage school run by Amanda, who has 3 houses, 6 horses, and is a great self-starter. The mind is tired and the eyes are slow. Now here's the thing that you can't see. A tiny figure behind the tree. He's a foot high guy. He's a foot high guy that only appears when you've lost your way. Till it goes free calamity. Please roll 4, bigger than before. Please roll 5, top of the pile. Please roll 6, pick up sticks. Keep some tiny tulips in a box on the ledge. That will be my garden, a prison for some plants, a dozen skinny worms, and a handful of ants. What paved me over? Let's get it over with.
And now we take a look at the Prog Archive's top-rated albums for 2018 here on July 3rd. At number 1, Hidden Man of the Heart by Ros Vitalis. At number 2, Ones and Zeros Volume 0 by Third Degree. Number 3, Z-Mice by Mother Turtle. Number 4, Seas of Change by Galahad. And number 5, Double Vision by Arena. Bomber Goggles and Ireland are at number 19. Marco Ragni, The Wandering Caravan, has slipped off the top 25, but we're sure to see him come back. The music in this video was used with permission from the artists. Many thanks to Ian Beerbout of Colouratura, Peter Matukniak of Evolve 4, Isabel Restrobo and Hamlet of Fabulae Dramatis. Thanks to Nick Katona of Melodic Revolution Records for asking, on my behalf, Forever 12 permission to use their music. And thanks to Karen Langley and Rob Williams of Babal for allowing me to use the music in this video. If you're interested in hearing more of their music, please do check out these bands, and, if possible, even purchase their CDs. It's fabulous music. Thank you for watching. We sign out.